The wind howled like a wounded animal as Adam Harrington trudged through knee-deep snow, each step an exhausting battle against nature's fury. The temperature had plummeted to unbearable levels, transforming the Siberian Wildlife Reserve into a treacherous frozen wasteland. His breath crystallized instantly, forming a thin layer of frost on his beard. Despite the specialized gear, the cold penetrated deep into his bones, reminding him that humans were merely visitors in this harsh domain. "Zoe, come in. Any sign of the tracking signal?" Adam spoke into his radio, his voice strained against the howling wind. Static crackled before his colleague's voice broke through, still showing movement in Quadrant 7, but it slowed considerably. "I'm worried, Adam. No tiger should be moving in this weather." Adam knew she was right. The Bengal tigers they monitored would typically take shelter during such extreme conditions. The fact that this particular tigress, whom they had named Nora, was still moving with her cubs indicated something was terribly wrong. The reserve had never recorded such punishing temperatures. Climate patterns had shifted dramatically in recent years, but nothing had prepared the wildlife or their human guardians for this Arctic onslaught. Adam's research station, nestled at the edge of the reserve, had transformed overnight from a simple outpost into the only hope for many of the animals caught unprepared by the sudden cold snap. "I'm heading toward the last signal," Adam replied, adjusting his course slightly. The tracking device embedded in Nora's collar was their only way to locate her in this whiteout. As wildlife conservationists at the Siberian Tiger Sanctuary, Adam and his small team had dedicated their lives to protecting these magnificent creatures from poachers, habitat loss, and now this unprecedented weather crisis. Nora was special, the first tigress they had successfully rehabilitated and released after she had been wounded by poachers. Her survival and subsequent motherhood had become a symbol of hope for the entire conservation project. The wind suddenly died down, creating an eerie silence broken only by the crunch of snow beneath Adam's boots. He paused, sensing a change in the environment. Years in the wilderness had honed his instincts. Something was watching him. Slowly he turned toward a dense cluster of frost-covered pines. Two luminous amber eyes reflected his flashlight beam. Adam's heart raced, but he remained perfectly still, controlling his breathing. The massive form of Nora emerged from the shadows, her orange and black coat crusted with ice and snow. Her powerful frame, usually the embodiment of feline grace and strength, now moved with labored effort. "Hello, beautiful," Adam whispered, maintaining his distance. The tigress regarded him with a mixture of wariness and what Adam could only describe as desperate recognition. 3 years of occasional encounters during his research had created an unusual connection between them. Not friendship, but a form of mutual acknowledgement. Nora took a tentative step forward, then glanced behind her. Adam followed her gaze and caught glimpses of smaller forms huddled in the snow beneath the trees. Her cubs, 3 of them, nearly invisible against the white backdrop, their coats fluffed up against the cold. Even from this distance, Adam could see they were in distress. One cub lay unnaturally still, while the others pawed weakly at their mother. The smallest one released a pitiful sound that carried clearly through the frigid air. For a wild tigress to approach a human so deliberately meant only one thing: desperation. The maternal instinct to protect her cubs had overcome her natural fear. She was seeking help from the only source she recognized. "I understand," Adam said softly, knowing it wasn't his words but his tone and movements that communicated with the tigress. "I'll help you. But you'll need to trust me." He slowly reached for his radio, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Zoe, I've found Nora and her cubs. They're in critical condition. The smallest one isn't moving much. I need the transport sled and medical kit. My GPS location should be on your screen." "Copy that. Oliver and I are already on the snowmobiles. ETA 20 minutes. "Make it 15 if you can," Adam replied, his eyes never leaving the tigress. "And Zoe, bring the portable enclosure. We'll need to bring them all back to the station." Adam knew the risks. Taking wild tigers into human care, even temporarily, could alter their behavior and compromise their ability to survive independently. But leaving them to face this killing cold was certain death. The sanctuary protocols were clear about minimizing human intervention, but extreme circumstances demanded extreme measures. Nora sank to her belly in the snow, her sides heaving with exhaustion. The maternal burden of keeping 3 cubs alive in these conditions had pushed her magnificent body to its limits. Adam recognized the symptoms of hypothermia and frostbite on her ears and paw pads. As he waited for his colleagues, Adam began clearing snow beneath a nearby outcropping of rock, creating a temporary windbreak. From his pack, he withdrew emergency thermal blankets, a poor substitute for proper shelter, but better than nothing. "This will help until we can get you somewhere warm," he said, continuing to speak in soothing tones as he worked. The tigress watched his every move, muscles tensed to protect her cubs if necessary, but she made no aggressive gestures, seeming to understand that this human represented their only chance. The distant hum of snowmobiles grew steadily louder, and Adam saw Nora's ears flick toward the sound. "That's just my friends," he reassured her. "They're here to help." The headlights cut through the darkness as Zoe and Oliver arrived with the equipment. They stopped at a respectful distance, understanding the delicacy of the situation. Zoe Xavier, the team's veterinarian, assessed the scene with professional calm, but Adam caught the brief widening of her eyes. In all their years at the sanctuary, they had never attempted to transport a fully grown wild tigress and her cubs. "She sought me out, Zoe," Adam explained quietly as his colleague approached. "I think she knows she needs help." Zoe nodded, her expression somber. "The cubs first. They're the most vulnerable." What happened next would later be described in scientific journals as unprecedented cooperative behavior. As Adam and Zoe prepared the specialized transport sled with warming packs, Nora maintained her position, watching intently, but making no move to prevent their approach toward her cubs. Oliver remained with the snowmobiles, ready for a quick departure if the situation turned dangerous. His previous experience as a wildlife ranger made him acutely aware of how quickly a mother's tolerance could transform into aggression if she perceived a threat to her young. "Easy now," Zoe murmured as she and Adam approached the cubs. The smallest one, barely moving, was their priority. In a carefully choreographed movement, they lifted the cub onto a thermal blanket. Its eyes were closed, tiny body shivering uncontrollably. Nora rose slightly, a rumble in her throat, but then settled again, her gaze fixed on her cub. "Severe hypothermia," Zoe confirmed after a quick examination. "We need to get them all to the station immediately." Loading 3 tiger cubs and their mother onto sleds attached to snowmobiles was a task that had never been part of their training. Yet somehow, through a combination of professional skill and what Adam could only describe as Nora's desperate cooperation, they managed to secure all 4 tigers for transport. "I've never seen anything like this," Oliver whispered as they prepared to depart. "It's like she knows exactly what we're trying to do." Adam nodded, equally amazed. Intelligence and instinct. She's making a choice based on survival. The journey back to the research station was tense, every bump and turn threatening to distress their precious cargo. Adam rode with the smallest cub secured against his body, sharing his warmth, while Zoe transported the other 2. Oliver took the most dangerous position, pulling the sled carrying Nora, who lay sedated just enough to keep her calm during transport. As they approached the lights of the station, Adam allowed himself to acknowledge the extraordinary nature of what was happening. In all his years as a conservationist, he had maintained the professional distance necessary when working with wild animals. Yet there was something about Nora's deliberate seeking of human help that touched him profoundly. The research station, a cluster of rugged buildings designed to withstand the region's harsh conditions, had never been intended as an animal hospital. But over the years, necessity had forced them to adapt. The largest outbuilding had been converted into a basic veterinary facility where they occasionally treated injured animals before release. Tonight, it would become a lifeline for a family of tigers. Kevin, the station's manager, had prepared the space according to Zoe's radioed instructions. The heating was cranked to maximum, creating a pocket of warm air that felt almost tropical compared to the outside temperature. "Everything's ready," he reported as they carefully unloaded their precious cargo. "But I still think you're all crazy. A mother tiger. In our station?" "We didn't have a choice," Adam replied. gently transferring the smallest cub to a prepared bed of warming blankets. "Look at this little one. Another hour out there, and we'd have lost them all." The next hours passed in a blur of focused activity. Zoe moved between the cubs, administering fluids and monitoring their core temperatures. The smallest cub, whom they named Nina, remained their greatest concern, her tiny body struggling to generate enough heat despite their interventions. Nora was placed in the largest enclosure, separated from her cubs only by a mesh barrier that allowed her to see and smell them. As the sedative wore off, the team watched nervously for signs of distress or aggression. Instead, the tigress simply rose unsteadily to her feet, inspected her surroundings with cautious attention, then settled into a position that gave her a clear view of her cubs. The look she gave Adam was one he would remember for the rest of his life, a direct, knowing gaze that seemed to contain both gratitude and warning. "She's telling us she's accepted our help for now," Adam interpreted, "but she's still their mother." "Remarkable animal," Oliver commented, shaking his head in wonder. "I've never seen this level of tolerance from a wild tiger." Outside, the storm intensified, battering the station with winds strong enough to make the sturdy buildings creak and groan. The temperature display on the wall showed an external reading that none of them had witnessed before in the region. Nature had thrown down a challenge that threatened everything they had worked to protect. As the night deepened, Adam took the first watch, sitting quietly near the enclosures, documenting every observation for their research. Conservation work was often about heartbreaking choices and losses. Tonight, at least, they had managed to intervene in time. Nina, the smallest cub, stirred in her sleep, tiny paws twitching as her body finally began to warm. Across the room, Nora watched, her amber eyes reflecting the dim light, a mother temporarily dependent on the species she had learned to fear, making an impossible choice for the survival of her young. Outside their haven of warmth, the Siberian wilderness lay locked in ice, indifferent to the small miracle of cooperation unfolding within the station walls. The storm was forecast to last for days, meaning their unexpected guests would remain longer than anyone had anticipated. Adam leaned back in his chair, realizing that their real challenges were only beginning. How would they care for these powerful wild animals without habituating them to human presence? How would they eventually release them back into a wilderness that had proven so deadly? And perhaps most importantly, what would they learn from this unprecedented encounter that could help other animals survive in a world of increasingly unpredictable extremes? As if sensing his thoughts, Nora's gaze met his across the room. In that moment of connection, Adam felt the weight of the responsibility they had accepted, not just for these 4 lives, but for all the creatures under their protection who faced an uncertain future in a changing world. "We'll find a way," he promised softly, though whether to Nora, her cubs, or himself, he wasn't entirely sure. Dawn brought no relief from the brutal cold. Adam woke with a start, realizing he had dozed off during his watch. His first instinct was to check on their patients. Nora lay alert but calm in her enclosure, her intelligent eyes tracking his movements. The 3 cubs showed remarkable improvement. Even little Nina had begun to show signs of recovery, her breathing stronger and more regular. "Good morning to all of you," Adam said softly, keeping his voice low as he recorded their vital signs in the logbook. Zoe entered, carrying steaming mugs of coffee. "How did they do through the night?" "Better than expected," Adam replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Nina's temperature is almost normal now." Their moment of quiet assessment was interrupted by Oliver bursting through the door, bringing a blast of frigid air with him. "You're not going to believe this," he announced, brushing snow from his coat. "The main road is completely blocked. A transport truck jackknifed about 5 miles out, and with these temperatures they can't get heavy equipment through to clear it." "How long are we talking?" Zoe asked. "At least 4 days, according to emergency services. We're effectively cut off until the weather breaks." Adam glanced at their tiger guests. 4 days would stretch their supplies, especially the meat needed to feed a lactating tigress and growing cubs. "We'll need to adjust our feeding protocols. Smaller portions spread throughout the day." "There's more," Oliver added, his expression troubled. "Communications are spotty at best. The main satellite link is down, and we're relying on the backup system. If that goes too..." The implications hung in the air. Their isolated research station would be completely cut off from outside support or emergency assistance. If anything went wrong with their dangerous guests, they would be entirely on their own. Kevin appeared in the doorway, his usually cheerful demeanor subdued. "Supply assessment complete. We're okay on food for us humans, plenty of dry goods. Medical supplies are adequate, but our frozen meat reserves for carnivore rehabilitation," he trailed off. "How bad?" Adam asked directly. 3 days at normal feeding levels for a tigress her size. Maybe 5 if we stretch it. Zoe ran a hand through her hair, a gesture Adam recognized as her processing difficult information. "We could reduce our own protein intake," she suggested. "Divert some of our food to the tigers." "Let's not panic just yet," Adam replied, always the voice of practical optimism. "We have options. The weather report shows a possible break in 3 days. That might be enough time for a supply run if we ration carefully." A soft whimper drew their attention. Nina, the smallest cub, had awakened and was pawing at the mesh barrier, seeking her mother. Nora responded instantly, moving to the barrier and emitting a rumbling sound that seemed to comfort the cub. "They need to be reunited soon," Zoe observed. "Separation is stressful, even though they can see each other." "Agreed. Let's prepare the large rehabilitation enclosure. We can modify it to give them shared space, but still allow us safe access for treatment." The sanctuary's rehabilitation enclosure was normally used for animals preparing for release, a spacious area with both indoor and outdoor portions. With the current weather, the outdoor access would remain closed, but the indoor space would give the tiger family room to move while remaining protected from the elements. As the team worked to prepare the space, Adam found himself constantly checking on Nora. There was something about the tigress that fascinated him beyond scientific interest. Her decision to seek human help showed a level of cognitive reasoning that challenged many assumptions about wildlife behavior. "You're not what the textbooks say you should be, are you?" he murmured, as he observed her grooming herself meticulously. Despite her weakened condition, she maintained the dignity that made tigers such majestic creatures. By midday, the modified enclosure was ready. The real challenge would be transferring the tigers safely. Moving the cubs was straightforward enough, but relocating Nora required careful planning. "I don't like this," Kevin said, checking the tranquilizer rifle for the 3rd time. "She's been calm so far, but moving her could trigger protective instincts." "The tranquilizer is absolute last resort," Adam replied firmly. "I want to try something else first." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." Adam's plan was unconventional, to say the least. Instead of sedating Nora for the transfer, he proposed moving the cubs first, then allowing their mother to follow them voluntarily through a secured transport corridor. "It's what she wants anyway," he explained. "She came to us to protect her cubs. If she sees them being moved, her instinct will be to follow. Or to attack whoever is moving them," Oliver pointed out reasonably. "That's where the protected corridor comes in. She can see the cubs and follow them, but with safety barriers between us." After much debate, the team agreed to try Adam's approach, with the tranquilizer ready as backup. The cubs were carefully placed in a transport carrier, visible through mesh panels. As predicted, Nora became immediately alert when her cubs were moved, pacing anxiously but not aggressively. Adam opened the secure corridor that led to the rehabilitation enclosure, then placed the carrier with the cubs at the far end. The team retreated behind safety barriers, holding their breath as Nora's enclosure door was remotely opened. The tigress paused at the threshold, sniffing the air cautiously. Her eyes locked onto the carrier containing her cubs. With deliberate movements, she entered the corridor, every muscle in her powerful body tense but controlled. "She's doing it," Zoe whispered, watching through the observation window. Nora moved steadily through the corridor, her focus unwavering. When she reached the rehabilitation enclosure, she inspected every corner before approaching her cubs. Only when she was satisfied with the security of their new space did she relax slightly. The team released the cubs from their carrier remotely, and the reunion that followed brought unexpected emotion to everyone watching. Nora gathered her cubs close, examining each one thoroughly, paying special attention to Nina. The smallest cub nestled against her mother's warm fur, visibly relieved to be reunited. "That's a sight worth all the risk," Kevin admitted, usually the most cautious of the team. The success of the transfer boosted everyone's spirits, but their situation remained precarious. That evening, as the team gathered for dinner in the main cabin, they faced their challenges honestly. "We have limited supplies, unreliable communications, and a family of protected predators as house guests during the worst weather event in recorded history," Zoe summarized. "Did I miss anything?" "The generator's fuel supply," Kevin added, 10 days at current usage rates. "And we've got a scheduled check-in with the Conservation Board next week that we'll probably miss, which means they might send a rescue team into dangerous conditions," Oliver contributed. Adam listened to each concern, acknowledging their seriousness. When everyone had spoken, he looked around at the faces of his team, tired but determined. "We've all faced difficult situations before," he reminded them. "This is extreme, certainly, but not impossible. We have shelter, some supplies, and most importantly, each other. We'll approach this one day at a time." As night fell, Adam took his turn monitoring the tigers. The rehabilitation enclosure had an observation area that allowed him to watch without disturbing them. Nora had created a nest-like area in the corner, using the provided bedding, and all 3 cubs were nursing, even Nina, whose recovery seemed nothing short of miraculous. Adam recorded detailed notes on their behavior, maintaining his scientific objectivity, despite his growing personal investment in their survival. What they were witnessing was unprecedented in documented tiger conservation, a wild tigress actively seeking and accepting human intervention while maintaining her natural maternal behaviors. Lost in his observations, Adam didn't hear Zoe approach until she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You should get some rest," she said. "I'll take over." "They're remarkable, aren't they?" he replied, nodding toward the tiger family. "They are. And so is what you did today. That transfer plan was either brilliance or madness, possibly both." Adam smiled. "Sometimes the line between the two is very thin in our work." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the tigers. After years of working together in the field, words weren't always necessary between them. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Zoe asked finally. "Bringing them here?" "Yes," Adam answered without hesitation. "Out there, they would have died. Here, they have a chance. Our job is to make sure that chance doesn't come at the cost of their wild nature." As Adam finally headed to his quarters for some much-needed rest, he knew the challenges ahead were formidable. Their supplies were limited, the weather showed no signs of improving, and they were caring for dangerous wild animals in inadequate facilities. Yet as he drifted off to sleep, his last thoughts were of Nora's eyes, the intelligence and awareness he had seen there when she had first approached him in the snow. Those were not the eyes of a simple beast driven by instinct alone, but of a being making complex choices for survival. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new insights into the extraordinary creatures temporarily in their care. 3 days into their isolation, the situation at the research station grew increasingly precarious. The temperature outside remained brutally cold, their supplies dwindled faster than anticipated, and the satellite communication system flickered intermittently, threatening to cut them off completely. Adam stood at the observation window, watching Nora and her cubs. Despite the difficult circumstances, the tiger family was thriving in their care. Even little Nina, once at death's door, now played with her siblings, her strength returning visibly each day. "We've got a problem," Kevin announced, entering the room with their inventory clipboard. "The meat supply is critically low. Even with rationing, we'll be out by tomorrow evening." Adam nodded, having anticipated this moment. "I've been thinking about that. There's the emergency cache at the northern outpost. It's about 5 miles from here." "In this weather?" Zoe asked, concern evident in her voice. "That's extremely dangerous, even with the snowmobiles." "I know the risks," Adam replied quietly. "But I also know these tigers won't survive without proper nutrition. Nora is nursing 3 growing cubs. She needs protein." The team gathered to discuss the plan. The northern outpost, a small storage facility established for researchers working in remote areas of the reserve, contained emergency supplies, including preserved meat for wildlife rehabilitation. "I'll go," Oliver volunteered. "I've got the most experience with the snowmobiles in extreme conditions." "Not alone," Adam insisted. "I'm coming with you. 2 people means twice the carrying capacity and a safety backup if something goes wrong." After careful preparation, Adam and Oliver set out the next morning, leaving Zoe and Kevin to monitor the tigers. The journey was treacherous, with wind-driven snow reducing visibility to mere feet at times. They navigated slowly, following GPS coordinates rather than visual landmarks. Halfway to the outpost, disaster struck. Oliver's snowmobile hit a hidden ice shelf, throwing him clear but damaging the vehicle beyond immediate repair. Uninjured but shaken, he climbed onto Adam's snowmobile, and they continued their journey with the knowledge that their return would now be even more challenging. The northern outpost, when they finally reached it, was partially buried in snow. They dug through drifts to access the storage unit, relieved to find the emergency supplies intact. They loaded as much as they could carry onto the remaining snowmobile, knowing the extra weight would make the return journey slower and more difficult. "We should call in our status," Oliver suggested, using the outpost's backup radio system. To their surprise, the signal was clearer than at the main station. "Main base, this is Adam. Do you copy?" Static crackled before Zoe's voice broke through. "We copy. What's your status?" "One snowmobile down, but we've secured the supplies. We're heading back now. How are our guests?" There was a pause before Zoe responded, her voice tight with controlled tension. "The cubs are fine, but Nora's showing signs of stress. She's pacing, vocalizing. Something's changed in her behavior." Adam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the external temperature. Wild animals in captivity could become unpredictable when stressed, and a mother tiger protecting her cubs was potentially lethal if she perceived a threat. "We're 3 hours out. Maintain safe protocols and keep unnecessary movement around the enclosure to a minimum." The return journey seemed endless, the single overloaded snowmobile struggling through the deep snow. When they finally arrived at the research station, Zoe met them at the door, her expression grave. "Nora's behavior has escalated," she reported. "She's showing signs of captivity stress, repetitive movements, agitation. I think she's reaching her limit for tolerating confinement." Adam went immediately to the observation area. The change in Nora was obvious. The calm, cooperative tigress of previous days had been replaced by a restless predator. She paced the perimeter of the enclosure, occasionally testing the barriers with her weight. The cubs, sensing their mother's anxiety, had become agitated as well. "This isn't good," Kevin observed quietly, joining Adam at the window. "Her pupils are dilated, muscles tensed. Classic pre-aggressive indicators." Adam watched Nora's movements, recognizing the signs from his years of experience. "She came to us for help when her cubs were in danger, but now that they're recovering, her wild nature is reasserting itself. Captivity is becoming more stressful than the alternative." "But it's still deadly out there," Zoe pointed out. "The temperature hasn't improved enough for cubs that young." Adam was silent for a long moment, weighing impossible choices. "Maybe there's a third option." The team gathered in the main cabin to hear Adam's proposal. It was unorthodox, controversial, and possibly in violation of several wildlife management protocols. But it might be their only chance to prevent a dangerous escalation with Nora while still protecting the cubs. "The old ranger's cabin at the eastern boundary," Adam explained, pointing to a map. "It's small, isolated, and hasn't been used in years, but it's structurally sound. Most importantly, it has a large attached storage barn that could be converted into a temporary semi-wild enclosure." "You want to relocate the tigers?" Kevin asked, incredulous. "In this weather?" "I want to give them a transition space," Adam clarified. "The cabin is at the edge of the reserve, far from human activity. The barn could give them shelter from the extreme cold while allowing more space and a more natural environment." "And when the weather improves?" Oliver asked. "We remove our presence entirely, open the barriers to the wilderness and let them choose when to leave." Debate raged for hours. The plan was risky from multiple perspectives. Dangerous for the team, potentially harmful for the tigers if not executed perfectly, and a clear deviation from standard conservation protocols. But as Nora's stress behaviors intensified, the alternatives seemed increasingly worse. "If she attacks the barriers or perceives us as threats to her cubs, we'll have no choice but to use severe methods to contain her," Zoe acknowledged reluctantly. "That could mean heavy sedation, which carries its own risks. Or worse," Kevin added, not needing to articulate the final option that none of them wanted to consider. In the end, they reached consensus. The relocation would happen the following morning, when they had maximum daylight hours for the journey. They would use their remaining functional snowmobile and the research station's emergency transport sled. That night, as the team prepared the complex logistics for the move, Adam sat alone in the observation area, watching Nora. For a brief moment, her pacing stopped, and she looked directly at him through the glass. In her amber eyes, he saw not just the stress of captivity, but something that seemed remarkably like determination. "I know," he said softly, though she couldn't hear him. "This isn't where you belong. We're going to try to make it right." The relocation proved even more challenging than anticipated. The sedation required to safely transport Nora had to be minimal to avoid endangering her health, leaving her partially aware during the journey. The cubs, thankfully, traveled more easily in their insulated carrier. The trip to the eastern cabin took nearly 5 hours through difficult terrain. When they finally arrived, Oliver and Kevin worked quickly to secure the barn area, while Adam and Zoe monitored the gradually awakening tigress. The converted barn was far from ideal, but represented a significant improvement over the rehabilitation enclosure. They had created areas of cover using fallen logs and canvas, a sheltered sleeping den, and even a small artificial water feature using heated tanks. Most importantly, one entire wall was designed with removable panels that could eventually open directly to the forest beyond. As Nora fully emerged from sedation, the team retreated to the cabin, monitoring through a camera system they had hastily installed. The reunion between mother and cubs was tense at first, with Nora carefully inspecting both her young and their new environment. Gradually, her body language relaxed as she recognized the increased space and more natural surroundings. "Look at that," Zoe whispered, pointing to the monitor. Nora had taken her cubs to the sleeping den, where they all curled together in a pile of straw and blankets. For the first time since their rescue, the tigress's posture showed something approaching contentment. "Phase 1 successful," Adam noted in the logbook, though everyone knew the hardest parts were yet to come. The next week established a new routine. The team maintained minimal presence, approaching the barn only when absolutely necessary to provide food. They observed primarily through the camera system, documenting the family's behavior and health from a distance. Nora's transformation was remarkable. In this more natural setting, her wild instincts flourished. She began teaching her cubs essential tiger behaviors, proper grooming, meat-eating skills, even the basics of stalking using the enrichment items the team had provided. On the 7th day, weather reports finally brought good news. A warming trend was approaching, with temperatures expected to rise significantly over the next 2 days. At the same time, their satellite communication system stabilized, allowing them to contact headquarters and update them on their unorthodox solution. "The director is not happy," Adam reported after a tense video call, "but given the circumstances, they're reluctantly approving our approach with conditions." Those conditions included a strict timeline for full release back to the wild, comprehensive documentation, and an immediate return to standard protocols once the emergency had passed. The Conservation Board was particularly concerned about potential habituation. Tigers that associated humans with food could become dangerous to both themselves and people. As the weather improved, the team implemented the final phase of their plan. They gradually reduced their presence at the cabin, setting up automatic feeders that would continue providing food for a limited time after their departure. The removal panels in the barn wall were partially opened, creating small exits that allowed the cubs to begin exploring the natural world beyond while still having access to the safety of the shelter. "Tomorrow, we fully open the exit and relocate to the observation blind," Adam explained during their final planning session. "From there, we can monitor without being detected. After 48 hours, we pull out completely." That night, Adam took a final solo shift monitoring the camera feeds. Nora had been increasingly active near the partially opened panels, clearly aware of the wilderness beyond. Several times she had approached the openings, testing the air before returning to her cubs. "You're almost there," Adam murmured, watching her powerful form move with increasing confidence. "Just a little longer." Morning brought clear skies and temperatures that, while still cold, were no longer life-threatening. The team made their final preparations at the barn, removing all unnecessary equipment and ensuring the automatic feeders were operational. Their last task was to fully remove the wall panels, creating a wide opening to the forest beyond. Adam insisted on doing this personally, approaching the barn one final time. Through the observation window, he could see Nora watching him intently. Cubs gathered protectively behind her. Moving slowly, he removed the locking mechanisms and slid the panels fully open. A rush of fresh air entered the barn, carrying with it the scents of the forest. Nora's reaction was immediate. Her nostrils flared, taking in the smells of her natural habitat. She took a step toward the opening, then hesitated, looking back at her cubs. Adam stepped away, creating distance. "It's up to you now," he said softly. "Choose your time." From the observation blind 200 yards away, the team watched and waited. Hours passed with no movement from the barn. The camera feed showed Nora and her cubs had retreated to their sleeping den, as if considering their options. "Maybe they need more time to adjust to the open wall," Zoe suggested as evening approached. "Or maybe they're waiting for optimal conditions," Oliver added. "Tigers are naturally crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk." As if confirming his words, movement appeared on the camera feed as twilight settled over the forest. Nora emerged from the den, cubs following obediently. With deliberate steps, she approached the open wall, standing framed in the wide exit. The team held their breath as Nora took her first step onto the natural snow beyond the barn. She paused, testing her weight on the familiar surface of her world. Then, with growing confidence, she moved further out, turning to encourage her cubs to follow. Even the smallest, Nina, showed no hesitation, bounding after her mother with newfound strength. One by one, the tiger family emerged fully into the wild, their orange coats vivid against the white landscape. Adam expected them to disappear immediately into the forest, but Nora surprised him one final time. At the edge of the trees, she stopped and turned, looking directly toward the observation blind. Though it was camouflaged and downwind, something, perhaps some sixth sense unique to apex predators, had made her aware of their presence. For a long moment, Tigress and humans regarded each other across the distance. Then Nora turned and led her family into the depths of the forest, their forms gradually fading among the trees until they vanished completely. "That's it," Kevin whispered, emotion evident in his usually practical voice. "They're home." The team maintained their position in the blind for the full 48 hours as planned, but Nora and her cubs did not return to the barn. The tracking collar showed them moving steadily deeper into their natural territory, behavior that indicated successful readaptation to the wild. Their final task was to document everything, every decision, observation, and outcome, for the conservation records. What they had done was unprecedented and controversial, but also potentially valuable for future wildlife management in extreme conditions. As they packed up the last of their equipment at the cabin, preparing to return to the main research station, Adam found himself lingering, looking toward the forest where the tiger family had disappeared. "You're thinking about her," Zoe said, joining him. Adam nodded. "I'm wondering if we'll ever know what really happened here. Why she chose to approach humans, how she knew to lead us to her cubs. Maybe some things aren't meant to be fully understood," Zoe suggested. "Maybe it's enough that it worked." 2 months later, the tracking data continued to show Nora and her cubs thriving in the wild. They had established a territory in the heart of the reserve, far from human activity. The data showed normal hunting patterns, movement cycles, and social interactions, a family of tigers being precisely what they were meant to be. The Conservation Board's final ruling on their emergency protocols was a mixed verdict. Their methods were deemed irregular but justified under extreme circumstances, with recommendations for modified procedures in similar future situations. Most importantly, the success of the intervention had demonstrated that with proper care and respect for natural behaviors, temporary human intervention need not compromise an animal's wild nature. For Adam, the most meaningful outcome came in the form of Nina's continued survival. The smallest cub, once on the edge of death, now romped through the forest alongside her siblings, her tracking data indistinguishable from theirs in strength and activity. On his last day before a scheduled leave, Adam took the research helicopter for a final aerial monitoring of the reserve. The pilot followed the coordinates from Nora's tracking collar, bringing them high above a sunlit clearing in the forest below. Through binoculars, Adam caught a glimpse of the tiger family. Nora lay stretched in a patch of sunlight, while her cubs, now notably larger, practiced stalking skills on each other. Even from this height, the vibrant orange of their coats stood out against the greens and browns of the forest floor. As if sensing observation, Nora raised her head, looking skyward. For a brief moment, Adam felt that same connection that had formed in the snowstorm months earlier, a recognition between two different kinds of intelligence, a respect across the boundaries that separated their worlds. Then the helicopter banked away, leaving the tigers to their wild lives uninterrupted and free. As the clearing disappeared from view, Adam smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest gift humans could offer to the natural world was simply the wisdom to help when needed, and the humility to step away when not. In the seasons that followed, the story of Nora and her cubs became something of a legend among conservationists. Some called it a miracle of timing and luck, others a testament to the intelligence of tigers, and still others proof that humans and wildlife could find moments of cooperation even while maintaining necessary boundaries. For Adam, it remained simply a privilege, a rare glimpse into the complex world of a creature both utterly different from and remarkably similar to himself. A reminder that even in a world increasingly shaped by human influence, there remained wild hearts that would always find their own path home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.